Hey guys, Furum here, and today I am going to be testing the Lamborghini Aventador SV in multiplayer. Now, I tested this car a while back when I won it multiplayer tuned, so check that out if you have not seen it already. Now I have MaxPro'd it with a rank of 1810, and I have the standard MaxPro Elite tuning of 0808. So let's get to our first race, which is on London against a Corvette Grand Sport and two Vulcans. Even with using perfect nitro, the Aventador SV starts up faster than the Corvette Grand Sport. So this car does have real speed. It does go 314 to 315 miles per hour, almost exactly the same speed as the Vulcan, which allows for it to compete quite well with them. So its drifting, while not being the best, is not terrible either when MaxPro'd like this. Now, if you have multiplayer tuned it and have zero handling upgrades, that's when its drifting is kind of bad, but it's good when MaxPro'd. As you saw in the title, I think the Aventador SV is a lot like a second Vulcan. It has worse acceleration and drifting, but almost equal speed and better nitro efficiency. That is, when you perfect nitro. The triple tap nitro in this car does not last nearly as long. So here, I managed to pass this Vulcan because I took the curve a bit sharper than he did. Again, that is an extremely important thing to do in multiplayer. And the two Vulcans that were behind me wrecked, and so I basically now have free roam on the track until the end of the race. This car's perfect nitro is probably its best asset because, as you can see, even at double speed, you can see it lasting quite a long time. This is very important on maps like Tokyo or Iceland, where you could have a much easier time beating cars like the Vulcan or the Homage that may be just slightly faster, but have not as good nitro efficiency. So here we beat two Vulcans and the Corvette Grand Sport as well. Now for a race on Patagonia against three Vulcans, I believe it is. Now here at the beginning, this Vulcan bumped me, causing me to fly into the air and go onto the long way. But one of the Vulcans wrecked, and another one went onto the long way as well. As you can see here, he's about the same speed. He was just nosing behind me, not really catching up nor pulling away. So as you can see throughout this race, if you are around the same place as a Vulcan in a race, and you have equal skills, you'll pretty much stay side by side to each other. Also, if you are ahead of the Vulcan in a race, you're most likely going to stay ahead, and if you're behind the Vulcan in a race, you're most likely going to stay behind, assuming you have around equal skills and that nobody wrecks. I did not actually manage to win this car the first time its Enduro Double Down came around. I got about 2/3 of the points required for it, but at that point, I just did not really know how to do Enduro Double Downs. But the second time around, I did manage to do it, and I've managed to do all Enduro Double Downs that have come out in the past few updates, so I'm pretty proud of that. The one other Enduro Double Down car that I really want is the Icona Vulcano. It has a fairly good speed at MaxPro, and its multiplayer tune gives it a fairly good speed for its rank as well. So yeah, I'm really hoping that either its Enduro Double Down comes back, or an Assembly Cup for it comes. I don't know if one has come yet or not. Now, when I won this car multiplayer tuned, it could go around 300 miles per hour at a rank of 1670, I believe it was, which is pretty good for that rank, but it just wasn't extremely competitive. A Vulcan around that rank can go nearly 10 miles per hour faster, whereas at MaxPro you go almost the same speed, as you can see in this race. So if you won this car, I would definitely recommend MaxProing it rather than keeping it multiplayer tuned. It is also a lot easier to drive at MaxPro than multiplayer tuned. Now back there was a Vulcan just stopped on the track, and the Vulcan behind me rammed into him, and one left, and then not too long after, the other one left. So it ended up being me versus this guy ahead, but technically I still beat both of them because they were behind me and would not have caught up. So in this race, we lost to one MaxPro Vulcan, but beat one as well as another one who was trolling, and I can only assume he was free racing. But then I don't know why he even left, because you do lose points if you leave the race when you're free racing, which I don't think should be the case. Because if you're free racing, nothing should happen to you when you leave, just like nothing will happen to you if you come in whatever. Like, you could come in last and go down nothing, whereas if you leave, even when you're free racing, you're gonna go down the same amount as you would go down if you were ticket racing and left. It's a little weird. I think they should make free racing during seasons exactly the same as free racing off seasons. And speaking of off-season, I am going to be streaming this off-season, Monday, March 12th at 5 p.m. Central Standard Time, so I hope to see some of you all there. So here, the Vulcan took the long way, and thus I managed to catch up to him here. Also, because my airspeeds were better, I managed to catch up to him even closer, but then he pushed me to the side and knocked me down. As you might imagine, that was kind of upsetting, but as I do all my races, I just decided to play it out and see what would happen. And as you will see, I am glad that I did. So the two cars ahead of me are that Vulcan that knocked me down and an Aranera Hesera GT, who is also MaxPro'd. Contrary to popular belief, the Aranera Hesera GT actually does best at MaxPro'd rather than at a multiplayer tune, because at MaxPro, Mr. Mysterious Spyman reached 2300 rating twice, whereas I don't think I've seen anybody reaching 2300 rating in a multiplayer tuned one, although I assume it's possible, but probably less likely because, well, at MaxPro there are more people in very high champion league, and thus you'll likely gain more points per race, since your chances of beating Vulcans at MaxPro are just as good, if not better than, beating them when multiplayer tuned. However, it's still a few miles per hour slower than the Vulcan and the Aventador SV. It goes around 212 to 213 miles per hour at MaxPro. So here you can see, taking the inside here is quicker in almost every car than going in the tunnel. He was ahead of me, and now he's behind me. In cars like the Camaro and SLK only, or any ones that have extremely high top speed and bad drifting, are the ones where you should go in the tunnel. Now for an interesting race on Rio de Janeiro that really shows this car's potential. Even though its acceleration is slower than a Vulcan, it's not that much slower, and none of them were able to pass me at the beginning. So if you start in front, there is a fairly good chance that if you triple tap, they will not pass you, and if you drive very well throughout the race, they will still not be able to pass you. However, if you get put in the back and there are a whole bunch of Vulcans in front of you, the opposite will likely happen. So yes, as I said, it's basically a Vulcan double. Because of its slower acceleration and slightly worse drifting, it cannot get as good of a time in a lot of events, but it does almost as well in multiplayer, assuming that you don't get knocked down at the beginning, which thankfully did not happen to me very often in the races that I tested in this car. Interestingly enough, throughout the second lap of this race, the Vulcans just got further and further behind, and thus I finished in first. So let's see what the cars were behind us. There was a MaxPro'd Aston Martin Vulcan, two of them actually, as well as a MaxPro'd Camaro SS, which you're best tuning between 1450 and 1700 rating, not above that, or else it just gets killed by Vulcans on most tracks. Interesting little story about the beginning of this race. I'd actually changed my nitro key from the enter key to the / key because I did not want to wear out my enter key and thus lose a lot of the functionality of my keyboard, because I do play on a laptop and that would be a little bit difficult to replace. And because it had become such a habit to tap the enter key, I was furiously tapping that at the beginning of the race and wondering why it didn't work, and then finally I remembered that I had changed the key. Thankfully, it did not have too much of a bearing on the outcome of this race. As you will see, I'm in 5 out of 6, but do not worry. This race does not turn out as badly as you might think it would end up turning out. Now, in the video a while back that I made of this car multiplayer tune, I said that I would soon release a video of a MaxPro'd one. It has been several months, and I'm sorry about that for any of you who have been waiting for this video. I just had a lot of other cars to get to first, because I always try to make videos of newer cars first, because, well, that's what's relevant at the time, and people will be needing to watch them right then, and not like 2 months later when most people either already have it or have forgotten about it. So, generally speaking, older cars that I've already made a video about will be on the lower priority of my list, as well as cars that just plain aren't as good, even if they are newer. Like recently, I got the Sparta and the Alpine, which are not that great in multiplayer, and while I still want to test them out sometime, there are so many other cars that are better and that are more useful that I will probably need to test out first. And if there's a car that not a lot of people are really interested in and it's not all that great, what I oftentimes do is I record races with it and I don't upload the video yet. Instead, I save it for a time when I don't have much other content to upload, and thus I'm still being able to put out a video for you guys every day or two, which is what I try to do. So I've made it all the way back up to 3rd position, and one of them stopped near the end. I can only assume either to help people gain points or to take a selfie with me, which has actually happened a few times in multiplayer, but when I'm recording a video, I'm most likely not going to be stopping for a selfie. In this race, we had a Devel 16 prototype in Amateur League. Probably a hacker. So going back to selfies, if you would like a selfie with me, the best time to do that is during my live streams or during one of Dr. Hallusion's live streams, because those are the times when I am most likely to be taking selfies, because there's nothing else to worry about. That's the reason I do live streams off season. If something happens, say crazy lag or something, and I leave, it doesn't affect me in any way, whereas if I were to stream during the season, even if I was free racing, number one, something happen and I'd lose points because of it, and that would just be completely pointless. Or a lot of other people might still have tickets and thus not be able to take selfies, because that is one of the main things we do in my live streams, and it is probably one of my favorite parts of them, just playing around, which might be a little harder to do with as many people during the season and would be kind of irritating for anybody who was ticket racing and wrecked on those who stopped for a selfie at the end, and yeah, I just don't think that is too great of an idea. I may stream during the season someday, but I do not know. For now, I will not be doing that. So in this race, I've gotten into 3rd position and am just staying here. As I said earlier in the race, this is a lot of the time what will happen. By the time everybody does their initial wrecking or whatever, you're pretty much going to stay at the same position throughout the race, just because of, well, how close this car's performance is to the Vulcan. So we're coming up to the end of this race on Mountie, which, by the way, is one of my least favorite multiplayer tracks because of the irritating curve at the beginning mostly. So we lost to 2 MaxPro Vulcans, but we did beat a triple boosted BMW Homage, as well as a MaxPro Vulcan and a nearly MaxPro Corvette Grand Sport and a MaxPro Aeronera Hacera GT. That's a lot of cars. Now for the final race of the video, which is an intense battle between me in my Aventador SV against 5 MaxPro Vulcans, one of whom tried to knock me down at the beginning, but failed, and thus slowed himself down. That is one reason why I usually do not try to knock down anybody at the beginnings of races, or at any points in the races either. Because, well, it does not usually help you much if you're faster than them anyway. You're just going to pull away even if you don't knock them down, and you risk running into a problem, like trying to bump them from behind and then slowing down and getting stuck behind them for a while, or they push you to the side or something and you end up getting knocked down instead. So generally in multiplayer, it's best to not try to knock down people unless you are at the beginning in a fast accelerating car and you can knock down a slower accelerating car with higher speed so that he may not catch up to you later. That is one time that I do recommend trying to knock down. A couple other things I'd like to say before the end of the video. First off, the Aerial Atom can be won with just 7 on exhaust and nothing else. I'm going to be trying to win it at that so as to conserve V8s for better cars such as the Sinar 1, Aeronera Hacera GT, and Corvette Grand Sport. Also, I'd like to tell you guys a little something about my videos that you may or may have not noticed. I try to make all my multiplayer videos between 10 and 15 minutes long. Let me explain why. Below 10 minutes, I always feel like I don't actually have enough material in the video to accurately and completely portray the car that I'm trying to show. However, above 15 minutes, it starts to feel a bit tedious, you know? And at that point, you've already really seen all the races that you need to make your decision about the car. But I do try to still put a lot of races in the video because I want you guys to form your own decision about the car and not just have me tell you, this car is good, this car is bad. Because you may see a car in a different light than I do because of a variety of reasons. Like, say, for example, I say a car isn't very good. That's because, for one reason, I'm in Champion League. Now, for somebody who's in Challenger or Low Pro League, such and such a car might be very good. So how good a car is does depend on how you look at it and your current circumstances in multiplayer. This car, however, is undeniably good, unless you're in, like, Elite League or something. So this car is definitely worth it to save blueprints for. Thank you all for watching. Please like the video if you enjoyed, and consider subscribing for more Asphalt 8 content. And I will see you later. Goodbye.